tool used to track content. Think of things like Brandwatch, Meltwater, Talkwalker, Brand24. Have you seen some of those platforms? Have you seen how they look like? Well, these are the so-called self-service platforms used in by PR, communications, marketing, and branding practitioners. Can probably lift up a real one in front of you. Just let me see. Uh, we go.
We actually in one of the classes, Maya, I've actually introduced them to Brand24 because that's
Mhm.
quite easily accessible.
Yeah.
Others, I think a lot of them you need to subscribe.
Yes, exactly. Brand24 is a good one for just um, quick testing and for these uses. But basically, this is how a platform, any platform, looks in a similar way. You have searching here. Robert, the chatbot, is talking to me. I don't want to talk to Robert, the chatbot. Um, but I can here, for instance, search for, let's say, University of Indonesia, and I want to search in X. Let's see if we have any results from TikTok. And I'll search in the last 7 days. And let's see if there's anything on TikTok or Twitter. I think it's mostly Twitter, yes. We don't get that much TikTok results that's filtered. But see, you can see here tweets mentioning University of Indonesia. This is how they look like, but this is how you would create a search, writing up some words. You want to include all of these words, at least one of those words, or none of a certain kind of words. Um, Nice that we have the AI powered insight here on the top. I'll talk to you about this. But effectively, in most use cases, these platforms, what you need to do is go in and type in your search. And I'll go back to my slides. And the examples here include also Brandwatch and other tools. But basically, in some cases, you don't need just one word. You need a very complicated search logic like this. For instance, you only want to search for um, comments around, being a fan of and liking Peloton bikes. So you would create something quite complicated like this query. And traditionally, people like me are doing it. Um, but then nowadays with AI tools, you can actually start writing in a chatbot. This is the chatbot in Brandwatch, I think, where you say, I need, no, I think that was Talkwalker, where you would describe what you need to research, and then it will give you a suggested Boolean as a starting point. Or other modules have something like this, where you generate keywords, or even you start a question, start questioning the tool. So, and you can say in a plain sentence, "Hey, I want to research Peloton and user experiences, positive user experiences," and the model would then help in the backend design such a query so that you can get the results that you need. As you can imagine, this means that such um, functionality really, really helps users that don't have the training and the sufficient knowledge, know-how, experience, and even time to create and research for such a Boolean. So this is something that is already helping again, and I'm using this word for the second time, democratizing the process. It really helps more people be able to engage with media intelligence results because this initial entry point, creating your search, is now much easier. Automated insights, this is something that was lifted on the Meltwater platform, but this here are examples from four or five different platforms. I think actually this is probably brand 24. I have purposefully anonymized those which platform is which. But this is something that I wanted to show you. When in most of those platforms, you can see this kind of trend line generating. And in any case, you need to know what drove this spike, what happened here. Just 4 or 5 years ago, you can't see it like this with a little light bulb. You click on it and it loads. You had to filter down to this day, uh, or even a few hours, look at a smaller sample, review it, and come up with the finding yourself. In this case, we now these new technologies help us really quickly identify what drives a coverage peak. It might not be relevant, it might be relevant, but it's much faster now to see what is behind those peaks. So here some platforms annotate the peaks and you can scroll down and see. In other cases, it gives you some summary stats. And in other cases, it gives you a light bulb where it literally creates a couple of sentence, a paragraph of what drives it. And this is how this looks like. Automated insights for peaks really help us as researchers, but also our end clients quickly get um, the top level information they need. But what if you need to get deeper insights, not just on one conversation peak, but on a whole conversation? And again, this is what the tools in the existing tools are offering. I think this Blue Silk GPT, this Stockwalker, this is what they're saying. This is an internal tool that we have developed in Cometric. This is something that I think comes from Brandwatch. So it gives you a really neat summarization of a big corpus of content. It might not be fully comprehensive, but it would be a good starting point to understand something as massive as, let's say, a corpus of 5,000 articles. Of course, you would not have time to read all those 5,000 articles, but this is a very quick tip of the iceberg view, and this is a good starter for deeper research so that you can come up with hypotheses that you want to test or directions you want to go into. And now I'm going to this slide, and does it mean that there is no point in pursuing a career in a research space that is already so much impacted by AI? And this is a question I was asked by students in Sofia University. And I really loved that question because it really made me think, not just for people who are entering our profession, but also for us who have spent a career building um, what we are, the expertise that we now have. What is happening with all those models? And my my short answer is not so soon. Humans are still very much needed for model testing, output validation, fine-tuning, ensuring ethics and compliance. This includes also copyright and licensing, privacy protection, understanding client needs, designing meaningful measurement frameworks, probably something you will be talking in this class as well. Things like the AMEC integrated evaluation framework, things that really help you measure meaningfully from desired results of a communication campaign to the actual results. Um, People are still needed to ensure that there is a robust methodology, replicable results, and also people are still key in actually consulting the clients in the so what. How do you use this data? And again, when a student in Sofia University asked me, "Am I afraid that I might go out of a job?" I laughed, thinking, okay, well, I think we, at some point, all of us could be afraid that the robots will take over the world. But I'm thinking that we are moving towards direction where um, and this is my desire as well, to have um, automation of different types do 90% of the work that I am doing now or people in my team are doing now. But for that remaining 10%, we are likely going to be paid even more than we are paid now for the 100% because this is the 10% that those models would not be, and even the best large language model would not be able to finish up. And this 10% of our human intelligence and expertise are going to cost more than the sum of everything we are doing now as part of media intelligence service offering. And with this, I want to open up to your comments and questions. And thank you for bearing with me and my quick health breaks.
Thank you so much, Maya. Um, Siapa yang ada pertanyaan? Anyone have any questions or comment? Damar. Silakan, Damar.
Okay, is my sound clear?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, hello, Ma'am Maya, and hello, Ma'am Felicia and friends. First of all, I want to say thank you for today's opportunity. I've earned lots of new insights around AI and media intelligence. I actually have two questions around this. The first question is, I've had experience about collecting data and answering various of questions surround the data, but sometimes I still feel kind of scared. Is the question correct, or did I get the correct data? Did I get the correct questions? So the question is, what is the most challenging part of data collecting in media intelligence in your experience, Ma'am Maya? And the second question is around countries that developed AI. We all know that China right now is the most developing technologies in the world, and he's competing. They're competing with U.S. I think, and they're developing countries, but how they manage their technologies and how they create lots of innovations around AI is clearly amazing. So I want to ask your personal opinion about this. What actually differentiate China with other countries? Yeah, thank you.
There are two amazing questions. I will start off with the first one, the data collection. So when you say data collection, what do you mean? Coming up with the corpus of, let's say, media articles or social media posts, or the process where, for instance, you interrogate a bot like ChatGPT, just to make sure that I understand you.
Uh, when I collect the data from ChatGPT or yeah, like that from AI.
Um, yeah, well, data from AI is, remember that it's synthetic data. This is not real data. This is something that is generated by the AI. So you have to be very, very careful to make sure you're not, um, for instance, you are doing um, a course paper and you're doing research. ChatGPT can be a great start when you ask questions, but you have to make sure that you are very, very clear when you're prompting. Always start with explaining what is your role, position, and end goal. For instance, you can say, I'm a second year student and I'm writing a course paper on media intelligence, and my topic is XYZ, and I would like an advice on, let's say, key academic research in that area. So start off with asking ChatGPT to provide you list of things that you have to then Google or other or search via internet so that you can validate. As soon as you validate this and say, okay, ChatGPT is offering me real papers, take a look at them, and then you can engage with a model like ChatGPT to ask for suggestions of, let's say, how your paper could be structured. And it's actually very good in providing structure, in providing a plan, a writing plan. Um, in any scenario, make sure to never use paragraphs generated by ChatGPT in your own papers, for instance, um, because sooner or later, all universities are going to have provisions in their plagiarism software to not allow, officially not allow AI-generated content. So think of, in research, think of ChatGPT as your companion and co-pilot, but not the main driver. It's always you have to be the main driver. And when you're doing research using models, make sure to always very clearly log the steps that you're taking. So basically, copy the whole conversation with your exact questions. If you are using this for research, it's really helpful for anyone who would be the end reader of your research to understand which exact questions you have been asking along the way. I can give you an example. A couple of months ago, a client, actually, these guys, Ricola, do you know this candy, the throat candy? I love them, and they're also a client. So they asked me to experiment, my team to experiment with the um, research on consumer perceptions using AI models. So what we did is we used, I think, three different chatbots. So ChatGPT, Claude, and one more, probably Perplexity it was. And we described to the bots specific consumer personas. Let's say I'm a 20-year-old student from Indonesia, or I'm a 40-year-old uh, working mother from Europe, um, and asking the models to give, from the perspective of these consumers, opinions on a type of product, let's say on throat candy, and which brands it would recommend. And then it would give me results, and I would then query back. Um, I prefer natural tastes. Which one would you recommend? And then it would tell you I actually prefer. Then I would actually recommend you Ricola because they have natural tastes, or I would recommend to you, I don't know, Tic Tac because it has a fresh minty flavor. Um, in the research that we presented, we very clearly logged all of those steps in our prompting and the questions we were asking in this research, because this is the only thing that really can make a research using these new tools reliable and transparent. As I told you, it's a black box, right? You never know what exactly you're going to get from a chatbot based on a large language model. So this is why the only thing that is transparent to you is what how you prompt it. So this is something you always have to log, and make sure to add a lot of details in your prompts on who are you and for what reason you're asking those questions. And when I say who are you, of course you don't necessarily mean to need to every time describe your real self, but the perspective you want to research from. On your second question, well, that's a huge topic of conversation. I'm very closely following. Um, the DeepSeek model definitely caused a lot of stir because of its amazing parameters. Um, Several of the US big players in the field have similar models in place already, but they're not publicly out and for free use. This is what differentiates here the DeepSeek phenomenon from the best-in-class models that are already developed by Meta, by Google, and of course OpenAI. Um, I think here one of the main things that we have to think about is now in this couple of years since the launch of ChatGPT, we're all getting increasingly reliant on chatbots and AI assistants. But they are privately owned. by companies that usually think of their own profit. Or if you think of DeepSeek, they might on the surface not think of their profit now, but they have a bigger play in mind being a Chinese-backed company. All of those models can at some point just say, door locked, you now have to pay to use it. But we're already conditioned on, how much time saving this gets us. And then we start thinking, okay, maybe we should be paying. Then the real monetization of this technology would start happening. Right now, we are still in the phase of, we are being subjected to endless promotion so that we can be really hooked. In the end of the day, you will be deciding for yourself what do you need, how much you're willing to pay for it, and who do you want to pay it to. Uh, for many people like me who are very manic, I would say, about reading the terms and conditions, a very important point would be what happens with the data I feed those models. How secure this data it is it going to be used for further training? Are those large language models allowing me to have local deployments so that I can use the model power but not feed data to a third party and actually run those models locally? So these would be decisions that are going to be, uh, you know, a lot of organizations and individuals are going to be faced with. I come from the European Union. The debates here are really sad, to be honest. Um, there is only one large language model developed by a European company, by Mistral, a French AI company. Uh, Technology-wise, Europe is lagging China, lagging the US. Um, but then, of course, the know-how is here. The regulatory framework, however, is much more difficult to start and to scale because of our intense focus in the European Union on regulation, privacy protection, information security protection. We really take regulation and policies seriously to the extent that innovation sometimes suffers because of this. So lax regulatory environments like the US are obviously very welcoming. And then when it comes to China, China is not a lax regulatory environment at all. But all of those models that come from China, they are government backed. Even if it says that this is a private company, it is government backed. And there is a law, AI law in China. I read it a couple of, I think, last year. And last year, this law had a very specific, it was written in the AI law of the country. All large language models have to comply with the Chinese Communist Party uh, manifesto. Okay, DeepSeek can help and can have amazing parameters, but of course, it it is guarded by the law of the country it is made in. And I have to know it when I use it, and of course, use it with that caution. I'm sure you've seen some of those experiments that people have been doing, asking sensitive subjects around the Chinese history and what the DeepSeek model is responding. There are ways to, you know, circumvent it and actually get it to respond, but this is the type of control mechanisms that are inbuilt in all of those large language models to some shape and form. So the impressive parameters are one thing. The actual use cases are a different thing. And our own user choices are a third thing. I'm not sure I was able to answer your question, but as a European, I really, really admire the way both the US and China are encouraging innovation in that space. As a professional, I am strictly very, very cautious, regardless which model I'm using, regardless if it's an OpenAI or a Gemini or a DeepSeek.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Mara, for the answer. I'm completely satisfied with your answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you, Damar. There is another someone else who's asking question, raising hand. Honey, please.
Yes. First of all, I wanted to say thank you to Madam Maya and Kak Felicia for the time and the material today. The question is that Madam Maya mentioned before the regulations about AI is uh, pretty like a very something that in the European Union, they really look up about it. So the question is, are there any ethical boundaries when we're using AI in the field of media monitoring? Like for example, in like privacy field or something? Thank you.
I would group, thank you, that's a great question. I would group the considerations in two main types. One is legal compliance, and the other is ethics. When it comes to legal and compliance, there is one element that is really, really crucial, and it's copyright. Um, so when we are talking about content that is analyzed for the purposes of media intelligence services, we usually talk about content that is produced by publishers. So articles written by newspapers and journalists and or um, news reports from a website, regardless that some news outlets already have AI generated news, right? But still, this is a huge industry. These are publishers, journalists, real life people who are working, feeding families. And this is why copyright and licensing protects their work. Normally, we have to pay copyright and licensing if we want to, use their content for any kind of analysis. What happens when their content goes into large language models for analysis? Can we guarantee that those third parties are not going to get this content and use it for their own training? Um, Terms and conditions of some of those models would say, no, 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 we're not using it for training. Can we trust them? And then the question is, what are publishers allowing? One of the outlets that is kind of at the forefront of all of those battles around copyright and licensing is the London-based newspaper Financial Times. It's a world-known title. I'm sure you have heard of it. Financial Times are known for their very, very strict rules on how their content can be used. So, for instance, companies like my company is paying a hefty license fee for Financial Times, not just to be able to read their news, but to analyze their news and provide reports to our clients. And this doesn't even mean, giving our clients the actual articles. We are not allowed to do this in the first place. We are only allowed to give them kind of a snippet and a link, and the client has to pay for their own subscription. But when we're talking about an analysis, saying, let's say, what is the representation of the oil and gas industry in Financial Times, I need to be able to read those articles and analyze them. Regardless if I read them manually or if I run them through a model, I have to pay because I am selling to a client a product that is derived from the copyrighted material of the journalists of the Financial Times. And Financial Times for 2 years was completely blocking any opportunity to feed their content to a large language model. And they initially they were refusing any machine learning on their content. Last year that changed. And now they're allowing me to use, and companies like the company I work for, to use their content to train classic machine learning models. So this kind of supervised learnings where we label the data first and we train a model, but they're still not allowing large language models on their content. If you have been following those news, you might know that Financial Times have their own agreement with OpenAI, but that agreement is not about training data. it's about providing real-time information when you interrogate the chatbot to give you links to Financial Times. So it's a very complicated environment, and that's an example of just one publisher. There are many others. Some of those are big enough to have their own conversations with either technology giants or companies like mine. Others are smaller but are working together under the umbrella of a copyright licensing body. And many countries have a copyright licensing body that represents multiple publishers. So, to be very blunt, most uses of large language models that feed content from news sources to a third party large language model would not be strictly compliant in terms of copyright and licensing. However, if this is run locally, that and provided that the companies doing it have the respective compliance licensing arrangements with the publishers, this should be fine. Question is, what goes to a third party? What goes to a DeepSeek, right? Or an OpenAI? The other question is around ethics. One of the first ethical concerns I, as a practitioner, have is when do I tell my client that we have used large language models or other types of AI? And the short answer is always. And I explain to clients, yes, this helps us deliver the work to you faster. It would not always mean it would be cheaper, but this is what has been used. So we are, and most of the professionals in our space, this is also part of the Barcelona principles, one of the main AMEC, I guess, how to call it, unofficial laws. Transparency and ethics is really, really critical for reliable research. So we are say we by we I mean companies like Cometric. We always say what data and what insights are derived by what kind of models, what is used where is the fully human analysis, where is the automated insights. But then thinking about privacy, social media content, this is where a lot of personal information is available. Laws and regulations on country level or region level, like in the EU, they govern our personal information as users, as social media users. But the actual social media websites, they have their own terms and conditions, and they also govern who has the rights to our data, who can they share it with, and who has the rights to the content we produce as user-generated content. In most cases, you don't have your own personal copyright to the user-generated content you upload to a social media platform. Based on their terms and conditions, the moment you upload it there, you already kind of don't really own the copyright to it. You just put it out there. It's a gray area, to be honest, and what my practice is to, when we're, regardless how we are analyzing social media data, is to always anonymize the personal information, but use the actual content. And if we anonymize the personal information, the only things we could potentially keep is some top level demographics, if and where available, to enable us to cluster content. Let's say this is coming from a person at this age group, potentially this gender, if this is something that they have specified, from this geolocation. And if the user has provided some information on their occupation and professional capacity, we could group them in a stakeholder category. Let's say student, or let's say if I'm doing research on healthcare awareness, medical practitioner, or something like this, but not the actual personal identifiable information, unless, of course, the person has specifically either used the labels of verified on Twitter, or otherwise have identified themselves, self-identified as a public figure or an influencer. Obviously, influencers, they have their own interest to be found, so because they would benefit from this. So in the sense of the European Union regulation, we call this legitimate interest. They have legitimate interest to be found. We have legitimate interest as researchers to find them. And our clients as PR and marketing professionals have a legitimate interest to contact them for potential collaboration. So this all works out. Fully private citizens, I would say it's a no-go area to include any personal information, but provided that the platform is open platform like X, for instance, the content that they produce could be analyzed. Is there anything else you would add to the question? Am I answering in the direction that you were interested in, Honey?
Yes, clearly, Madhumaya, thank you so much. It's like, I get it, it's more complicated than I thought at first, but I'll read more news to understand the whole ethical things about media intelligence and AI. Thank you so much.
Well, there are some uses around ethical uses of AI that are beyond the media intelligence space. Things like, fakes, deep fakes, mis and disinformation. They're really bigger societal topics, not just for the industry of media intelligence. And if you think of it, in everything that we do, AI is somehow already involved. Um, Now probably you will be, if you're not working already, probably you will be joining the job market soon. Many recruiters already use AI to screen applications. So bear this in mind. Be careful how recognizable you are on social media. And if you are there with your own name, then make sure that you have well-controlled presence on social media, so you don't put yourself in a light that might then prevent you from getting a great job, right? So if you want to do funny stuff and post it on social media, perhaps choose an alias that is not going to be linking back to your real self.
All right, thank you so much for the tips.
Thank you for that tips. One last question?
Me, ma'am.
Danendra?
I'm just curious. I want to ask about your opinion. Lately, the AI copying style of Ghibli that can generate this type of style in just a minute. I think it's just unfair for this artists that making for a year or a month for this kind of style, but AI just can copy it like in a minute. I just curious about your opinion. What do you think about it? Thank you.
Um, this was bound to happen. Same way, if you think when ChatGPT was launched, many people started asking ChatGPT to generate lyrics in the style of certain singers. Some of those singers were deeply offended by this. I think in the case with Studio Ghibli, there actually was an agreement. So Studio Ghibli greenlit this. It is from my perspective, it needs to be very, very transparently caveated. There needs to be watermarks, somehow technology solutions watermarks to show that an image is generated by AI, because it is definitely an area I have mixed feelings for. Think of it, if you are a big fan of Studio Ghibli, you might already, if and you're good in drawing, you might already be, redrawing a comic book strip, doing it very good, and then you would learn to draw in that style, and then you would be, ethically infringing that copyright. But no, this is fan art. That's kind of fine. when we talk about OpenAI, we remove the fan part because, ChatGPT doesn't care about being a fan, but it actually does the exact same thing you would do as a fan, but at a massive scale. There is no appreciation of the talent, of the real world talent, and it's interpreted as data. This is data. We crack the code. We learn how to replicate this data. In this case, it's visual data. In other case, it would be, voice data. I mean, for me, it was deeply amusing, but again, deeply concerning that I can generate the voice of a different person, of a different real person. That's a real story. I actually used the tool to generate to basically to read the news for me at one point because I wanted to test out if I would pay more attention to the news if I don't read them but listen to them, online news, and I chose Snoop Dogg's voice. It was really amusing to have Snoop Dogg read you the BBC newscast. But then that could be any person's voice, right? And it could be anything, not just news. Uh, Maybe an AI tool could, a malicious AI tool could then, give me a phone call with my husband's voice and tell me that he's divorcing me, right? I don't think I'm going to find that amusing. So it is a gray area and it needs open public debate. It needs the opinions of stakeholders, including the artist community. It needs the opinions of the technology community because they also have a point of view and a perspective. And it also needs active opinions by all of us, the users. And then that could spark policy conversations, regulatory debates, anything that has to do with policy and regulation. I'm always afraid that technology always runs in front of regulation. So whatever kind of regulation we come up with now, technology would find a way to circumvent it. And it's really hard to enforce regulation globally when regulation is naturally done on a nation level. So a law in Indonesia, how can you make sure it is being, um, you know, respected if the model is a US model?
Thank you, ma'am, for your opinion.
Okay, I think we are running out of time. Maya, it has been a great pleasure to have you. If I can just ask you one thing, do you have any tips for the students here? Like for, looking into the future, what are the traits or what do they have to know or to be prepared for? I guess I'm looking into more like soft skills rather than hard skill because I think hard skills is like something that everyone can learn, right? So it's a lot of resources. But what are the things that they need to prepare
When
for?
it comes to soft skills, there are just two things I would flag: curiosity and critical thinking. Be curious and test out. Test all of the tools you can get your hands on. Play with them. Find what they're useful for, what they're misleading, or with what they're not useful for. But then critical thinking is really, really important because this is what we will all need to, you know, to really identify what works, what doesn't, what is helpful and what is misleading. And critical thinking is obviously something we have to apply in in everything we do, in all of our professional but also civil decisions. AI in many shapes and forms is here to stay. It's developing much faster than anyone anticipated. We are, of course, I mean, technologists are anticipating a reaching of plateau at some near point because there's just so much technology can do with the available resources and computing power. We're hoping we're not going to run out of water on the planet with all of the water needed to, cool down the systems running those large language models. Maybe you can take a look at this if you haven't heard about the how much water is being used for your ChatGPT prompt. That's an interesting perspective. But curiosity is key. Be curious. Don't wait for things to come your way so that you know that you can't ignore them anymore. Proactively search for all of those new tools, all of those new technologies, how they can help you, where what do you enjoy, what you don't enjoy, what you like, what you don't like, and what ultimately is useful for you and helps you, and what doesn't, and just wastes your time. So I would encourage you, for instance, if you like endlessly scrolling on your TikTok feed, um, maybe save some on that time and play with the chatbots if you haven't spent a lot of time playing with chatbots. It's really eye-opening what they can do, what they can't do, and so on.
Thank you so much, and I think that's very useful. I hope that's useful for everyone here. So sebelum kita berakhir, kita foto sama-sama dulu ya.
Iya.
Kita tunggu
Iya.
Maya.
Mari teman-teman on cam dulu semuanya.
Kan prepare dulu. Okay. So thank you so much, Maya, again for your time. It has been a pleasure for us to have you here. We are very, very lucky. And I hope that everyone here learn, a thing or two and a lot from you. So thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. I will share with you the latest version of those slides, so the team can have it handy if they want to refer back to it. It was really a pleasure, and looking forward to meeting you someday in person in your future roles when you rule the communications industry.
Thank you. Oh, we're gonna have a group photo before we close. Okay, so everyone can have your camera on, please. Okay, smile. Wait.
Sama slide kedua. 1, 2, 3. Slide ketiga. 1, 2, 3. Oke, slide terakhir. 1, 2, 3. Oke, terima kasih teman-teman. Terima kasih Bu Felicia. Thank you,
Thank you
Madam
so much,
Maya.
everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
You too. Bye.